We are going and should be live.
Cool.
Ripping. Andrew, I'm psyched to have you on. I'm psyched to have a couple other
Yeah,
folks
man.
on to talk this whole blockchain and meat space thing.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, man. Everything's been kind of blending. It's weird. It's just it's really cool time. Like honestly, I remember crypto back in the day. Man, it was just all these crazy projects coming out. But now this is like, it's pretty sweet. Everything getting kind of melded together. Seeing that evolution of it.
Yeah, I mean there is an explosion, right? There's helium, obviously. There's pollen, a fast follower. I
Yep.
just saw something called Crank with two Ks the other day. I don't know if you've seen that.
No.
And then of course there's Weather XM. There's Demo. If we can get Andy on here.
Yeah.
It's just like there's a nonstop thing, and so I wanted to get on with you and with a couple other folks and just like talk about what you think is the future is going to look like, whether it's for you and your business or just in general on in this space. So
Yeah, man. I don't know. Honestly, like you said, there's more and more coming every day, right? Like I'm hearing about new projects every single day. I know you guys got a little bit of intro to like the foam stuff, like the location stuff. Like that's kind of cool. Like there's all these different projects that are happening all the time. I just think that you're gonna see a lot more like that, man. You're just gonna
yeah,
see a lot more come out over time. How's it going, guys?
Andy, what
What's
shaking,
up,
dog?
everybody?
Good to see you. What's up, dog?
Nothing and everything, man.
Okay.
Sorry I'm late.
Well, thanks for coming on. So, Andy, I mean, you're one of the folks doing this whole blockchain and meat space thing outside of Helium, although you're connected to it. What's catch me up? The last time we talked was, geez, 3 or 4 months ago, and when I looked at the shipping dates for the demo stuff, it was supposed to start shipping around now. Is that we still on target, or is that like, oh no, it's getting pushed back?
Yeah, we released a big update probably right around that time that incorporated some changes to the delivery schedule, but we've been able to ship at this point over 200 units to
Nice.
paying customers.
Yep.
So we've moved from what we were calling alpha fleet to beta fleet,
Yep.
and we passed some pretty cool milestones as far as having over 100 hardware devices simultaneously connected to the network, and we've also crossed 2,200 connected vehicles, so 2,000 connected vehicles a week ago, and then a bunch of people showed up last week, and so yeah, the networks, the test net's been growing about 10% a week, which is pretty cool to see, and um, we are getting ready to ship two more batches of hardware out to consumers over the next 2 months that are going to represent a pretty big step up in terms of deliveries. So, yeah, nothing new to report outside of what we've shared on the blog, and we have this tool for order lookups for people who have placed an order that shows you when you're going to get a delivery, and we're hoping in some cases to be able to exceed that in terms of shipping stuff out a little bit earlier, but we'll see.
Okay.
The global supply chain is
Yeah, the usual
quite
stuff. I mean,
fast.
I'm not as worried about the shipping dates. It's just good to see businesses starting up and going for it. And I see, I mean, just like talking to you two guys who I don't, you guys have met, right? Have you talked to each other? Or
Yeah.
no? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, we were in
Yeah.
Austin a couple of weeks ago.
that's right.
I'm an Alpha Fleet. I've got some demo on my car right now. Running.
Awesome. Yeah, maybe I
Oh
should
yeah,
figure out this Alpha Fleet thing and figure out how to get on board. But I just see, like, as this whole blockchain and meat space area grows, which is brand new, and people still, I don't think, understand what it is or what I'm referring to when I'm saying that. In fact, my wife Lee was asking me, she's like, what does it mean last night we were on our walk? I'm like, well, it's this thing that we're taking basically the technology of blockchain and applying it to the real world. And the crazy thing to me is as we're walking around my little neighborhood in San Diego, is it's happening to us, right? Helium beacons are going through us as we're walking. Like we are walking through this new world. And it's the same thing with demos that these cars are driving around. They're transmitting information. It's obviously hitting people and buildings and all the rest of it.
yep.
Like we're living in this world, and a lot of people don't understand it yet. So that's kind of the first exciting thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah, and
interesting. It's opening up a bunch of different like possibilities too, right? Like, just like everybody, like, we wanted to do something, kind of crazy where it was very similar to like Helium hosting, but we were just going to have like rideshare drivers and give them a crypto pack of all these different, different uh, companies' devices.
Oh, I
Very
love
similar
it.
to very similar. We're going to have Demo in there, so Hype Mapper, like all this, but it's
Yeah.
enabling all these new different types of companies that are interacting with these different people, and it's going to kind of, I feel like it's going to help evangelize crypto in general. Like you're going to have all these different people start jumping in that really never knew anything about crypto in the past.
Dig it. Let me see if I can get
Yeah.
my video to actually work.
One of the
I want it
biggest
to. There we go.
One of the biggest learnings for us as we've started to share this with more people is that we're definitely attracting a new set of consumers and end users that are interested in some cases in the blockchain and Web3 world, but in a lot of cases are really just looking to solve a problem, which
Yeah.
is very important and good. And so one of the things that we've used a little bit of the extra time that we have because of the hardware delays to do is really start to pull all of those words and acronyms that the average person doesn't really care about, like NFT or DAO or token,
Yep.
off of everything that we're putting out there. And so I think in the next release that we're going to put out, you'll start to see ways in which we've abstracted that away from the end user, and you can surface it if you care, like if you want to go onto a block explorer and look at the idea of your car on chain, or like get really into the weeds on how your earnings are calculated. That's something you'll be able to do, but you don't have to understand all of these concepts. And that's really cool, I think, about the like crypto for the real world thing, is that the real world is what really matters. So like ultimately, the crypto stuff just becomes a tool. And it also allows people to ask questions. Like you said, you're walking around and like cars are transmitting data everywhere, and then you start to ask like, well, where is that data going, and like how is it benefiting me? And in a lot of cases it's not, and people really don't like what's going on with the data from their cars, or how the OEM is keeping all of it but not letting them use it. And so like it is a really compelling thing to kind of like let people sort of discover that on their own if they care. And if they don't, like at least you're just solving a problem for them and producing something that helps make their life better.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Dennis and Jan, I'm psyched to see you guys on here.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, man. Let's see. Jan had said one of the like my favorite things that I've heard recently on a call we had, where I think you said every 2 weeks you guys sit down and you like look in the mirror and you're like, where are we fucking up? And how do we fix it? And that stuck with me so much, because I don't do that. I always think I'm the best at everything and always crush it.
Only every 2 weeks. Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like I do it every day.
So what's going on in Layer Zero world? What's going on with you guys? Because you're right at the forefront of deploying a bunch of different technologies.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, yeah, thanks for having us here, and good morning here. But yeah, it's we always try to have that kind of self-critique of what direction we're heading, and I think most importantly because we kind of started growing from the Helium ecosystem. That's kind of where we started. We understood it's very different than when you're a founder of a company and you have a very serious goal, right?
Yep.
You're just kind of chasing the goal, and you know what your kind of I guess deliverables are, or what's the heading of your idea, right? And you gotta kind of then work with your burn rates and all your stuff, right? But when you're part of an ecosystem, for us was very, very important to understand that and learn that you're a little bit like a sail almost in the wind, right? You got to understand what are you doing that you like, what are you doing that makes sense for you, but also what's incentivized, what's something that will make sense for you, for the network, where is the overall market going, where's the overall ecosystem going. So for us, we kind of learned the hard way, I guess. We was like, hey, this doesn't make sense. Even though we may like it right now, or maybe, and then as you become a little more relevant, you can actually make suggestions, right? You're like, hey guys, like what about maybe doing this program or incentivizing these, or can we do that, right? And I think that's where that came from, and always kind of like, just being very critical of what you're doing and at what pace, and of course taking into account your burn rate and your investments and all of that. But
you're always like tied in this world. It's like like if you have a company and you raise some money and you're just kind of working towards a very specific like engineering goal, let's say, or like a product or something like that. With like blockchain space, if you're operating as a miner or builder on the network, then you're kind of always tied to the chart. So you have to be like really mindful of that, because when the chart goes hella up, you're like, you're thinking one thing,
I'm the
and
smartest
then
ever. Yeah.
yeah, when it's going hella down, you're like, oh, what should we do here? But like you always have to like it's like so weird because your burn rate is like in USD, but then the chart is like all over the place. So
The
you always
earn
have
rate is
to,
in crypto. Yeah.
yeah. So you like I guess you have to be always like focused on that, and that's why we reassess, and we have to be really flexible and figure out like creative ways to like have kind of multiple irons in the fire, I guess,
Yeah.
and prioritize things really really tightly. Like, obviously, like for you're not going to be deploying, you're not going to be focusing your whole life on deploying like LoRa right now, just because it's like it's really tough.
100%. Yeah, so let's talk about a couple things, and I want to make sure that it's clear to everyone here is that this is not a helium focused show. I'm seeing pollen stuff come on. I'm seeing folks deploy pollen. When I get on the pollen calls, I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces there. So we're seeing pollen, we're seeing crank in this kind of distributed like radio system, and I'm sure there's others as well. But what I'm super curious about with you three guys, because it's very different. We have three different folks on here. Andrew Fisher's doing mostly software stuff, although deploying the Helium network. Andy at Demo is doing something with cars that is eventually going. I don't know if it's using Helium already or eventually going to use Helium, but it'll be connected in that way. But it's not like Helium isn't the focus. And then Dennis and Jan are deploying these different networks and figuring out how to provide wireless coverage. So kind of three different angles for looking at this whole blockchain and Meatspace arena. Andrew, I'm going to kind of pass it over to you. Is what's going on in your world when you're looking at where you started with Helium and where like the future of what you guys are doing, whether it's with wrapped HNT or something else, where's that going?
Yeah, so it's kind of shifted focus a bit. I mean, we obviously we started with Helium, right? So Helium's like was our our first big plunge into it into the
Yep.
crypto space.
Yep.
I had been doing it for a long time, but Helium was the one that we really focused on. That I decided to start a business off of, right? So that was the main goal. Now it's kind of shifted to more of like I'm seeing so many projects open up, like you were talking about before, that it's more like we're trying to position ourselves almost as like a DY, like a DY utility, like something that we're going to build for a bunch of different things. We're going to,
Right.
I could totally see, in the future, they talk about all these different types of coins and, stable coins and all these different tokens and stuff like that. But what I see like down the road is I almost feel like we're going to have data and data throughput almost be something similar, almost like a stablecoin back to data throughput. And we'll see something similar to that, where it's like you're going to have so many networks, they're going to be so competitive, so many different things that you're going to see something tied to the space, and so you're going to have a DY centric
Yep.
tokens of some sort.
Yep.
So that's we're just focusing on just being utilities for DY, and it doesn't matter whichever token it is, but wherever people need utility, we're going to try to provide it for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Andy, what are you seeing when you look ahead with Demo? It's like, all right, you got your shipping stuff coming down the pipe, but you got like the bigger picture of supplying all this data. But you're one of the people like actually building one of these blockchain and Meatspace projects. Like what are you looking when you look forward, let's say a year, where do you think the whole space is going to be?
It's tough to say, but I mean, there's certainly like it was mentioned before. You kind of have to like put up your finger and see which way the wind is blowing, and try to set your sail up in
Yeah.
to, capture that. And so it's certainly not slowing down, and there's a lot of focus, I think, with prices coming down on the real use cases that people are willing to pay money for.
Yeah.
And that's really appealing to us because we ultimately will become a customer and a user of a lot of DY networks. And having more options and more competition in the space is really good for us, and also allows us to provide utility into those networks as both an early user, but also a validator and a mapper, and help kind of strengthen the real utility that everybody ultimately cares about. And so I think we're very, very focused, and we've kind of set this initial goal. We're going to release a bunch of information. I actually just shared it with the like whole kind of core team an hour ago, of like, here's our roadmap that extends out a year at this point, and it's broken up into seasons, and we're kind of like, we just started what we're calling season 1, which is going to get us through the launch of mainnet, and then the next season after that is really about applications that are built on the platform, making quality of life very good for developers, and setting up like the people on this call to be able to build real businesses around Demo and create real useful services on top of the platform. And we've had a lot of really awesome developments as far as like enterprises that have been educated about the space through Helium showing up and saying like, we love what you guys are doing, how do we get involved? And we have a really good answer for them now, which is we have thousands of cars connected to the network, and we have a very clean way that we're developing for you to access the data and establish a relationship with those users that involves them sharing their data with you, and you can provide them a service, whether it's a better price for their car when they go to sell it, or better insurance, or some game that they can play with the data from their car. Like all of those things are going to start to develop.
Andrew,
and I think
you're psyched on that. How you're like, I will build that game in a second.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm looking.
Yeah.
I'm listening, man.
Yeah.
And hopefully, a year from now, we have killer apps running on the platform. It might take longer than that, but we're going to try to accelerate that happening as best we can, and in a way where we don't like overly integrate things together, and we keep things modular and open and decentralized. And so that's kind of where I see things heading in the years. Like more cars connected, more things to do once you connect your car, more ways in which those cars are interacting with the rest of the decentralized infrastructure world, and also building bridges into the rest of the world, whether it's the work we're doing with Twilio Super Sims, or traditional wireless carriers to offload data, or putting Helium or Pollen or whatever comes up next into areas where we see lots of demand for network connectivity.
Yeah, dig it. All right. Love it. Dennis and Jan, what do you guys see coming down the pipe, or what are you super psyched on? We talked about some of the challenge stuff, like how you're handling that. What's next that you're pumped on?
I think actually we're working on some stuff with Demo, which is really exciting. Not announcing that yet, but we're...
Oh, you top secret fuckers. There goes my YouTube rating.
But, Demo is actually something we were really... like early days of Helium, we were like, oh, Lime scooters are going to work on Helium or something like that. That makes sense. That makes so much sense. And I think funny enough, like Demo could be that Lime scooter in the world of like DY, where like that's an actual user, and it's actually like maybe even better than something like that, because it's like real use cases, real cars are driving around, they need connectivity. You want to be able to like move off of, the kind of centralized ways of connecting. So I think like we're really like passionate about like all the stuff that Demo is doing. That's really exciting. And I think for us, we're kind of working on some stuff there. And then obviously like Pollen is really interesting, just because it's like you turn on your phone and it's just like on, it works, and it's kind of a cleaner model for validation for mapping, because we always had this issue with Helium, where we like ran a whole program to map, and we just like burned a bunch of cash on that, just because we wanted to show that there's like coverage in LA and it's better than other cities, and like it was kind of selfish but also kind of selfless in some ways, and so we just like spent a bunch of money doing that. But now with something like Pollen, it's like, oh wow, that's like incentivized right now. So we're kind of like exploring those things, and we're still doing some stuff with Helium, just because we have kind of a big fleet there. So we
you guys got a bunch, right? And you must be doing. Are you adding a bunch of 5G to the LoRa setups you had, or you're like, whoa, we're gonna back off on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely on the table. We've definitely been thinking about, we have these, kind of latest stage big program nationwide of 50 states. It will be kind of I mean, I don't want to say a waste, right? But it will be a lost opportunity if we may not, just provide some additional, broadband connectivity to it, since everything is deployed, since we have the structure. So it's definitely on the table. We're thinking about it, but, we haven't taken any, physical steps to it. And I think everything, what Dennis, just wanted to touch a point on that, but like on what Dennis mentioned, is that I think overall we're looking to realize the dream that we thought Helium was going to achieve a little sooner. We were a bit naive, I guess, in terms of how soon people were gonna adopt IoT devices. It's the barrier of entry and the friction there is really really high.
Yep.
And for us, what turned the kind of the bulb, right, the light bulb on, and the idea and the excitement was that projects like Pollen or Demo is like you hook it up and it's on and it's access right there, right, and it's like your SIM card is on, your car now is connected, you have full whatever geofencing, maps, mileage,
All
statistics,
that stuff.
you
Yeah.
so there's a use and an infrastructure that's immediately much easier and much more relevant than a smaller IoT segment that's
Yeah.
also important, but maybe not as useful to the everyday customer. So anything DY, like that's why DY is like taking such a relevant point, right? Because it's kind of engulfing what's really useful. You're taking a lot of the terms that Andy was saying, like you forget about what an NFT and a DAO. Does it work? Does it get the job done? Is it a product? And if so, then I think it may have a chance to compete. So
And by the way, on the point of if we're gonna update the LoRa gateways to like 5G, there is I guess there is like a way that Minted is trying to like transfer the units from just being LoRa to being like an all-in-one gateway that can support 5G.
Yep.
But then I don't know if like we'll see on the economics, just because like radios are still really like that doesn't change, because like a CBRS radio is always like the pricing on all of them, so like you already know.
Right. It's
So
still gonna be $1,000 for indoor, or 1,500 for outdoor, or 2,000 or whatever it is. Like you're not gonna get around
yeah,
that price. Yeah. Yep.
yeah, it's gonna be like I don't know what the economics are gonna look like with the. I mean the hip is like so dense. It's just like the economics of that is I don't know. It's like
Yeah.
crazy.
No,
So,
it's still difficult to
You just
understand.
got to
and-
throw it out there and see what the price
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, we're definitely doing a little bit of both. Like on our deployments, we're throwing some up,
Yep.
just because it's one of those things where I look at it as like the risk reward, right? At the end of the day, if it's not a good investment and it's not, it doesn't work out the way that you planned, it's still telecommunications. It's telco equipment, so
Yep.
we can always get something back from it.
Yep.
So
Yep.
we've been doing a bit of it, and I think the competition, like you were talking about before, with like Pollen and now Helium and now Pollen and all these different ones coming about, it's really going to push the space really quick, and I think everyone's going to have to start really like ramping up, and the competition's going to be good for everything.
Yeah, it's gonna be good for everything except the sole company that kind of had the whole pie for a while.
Yeah,
But it's gonna be fantastic for consumers.
But
as
the
we're
whole
gonna see.
pie of what? Like there
Yeah.
was no money. Coming in, really.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I think this
There
is a cool-
there is no pie right now, and there's going to be a pie in the future. Everybody can see that.
Yeah.
At least on
we were cooking a pie. Now somebody took the pie. I don't know.
Yeah.
I
yeah,
knew
yeah,
we were
multiple pies being cooked, but none of them are out of the oven yet.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that's so exciting, and that I think is important to hammer home is none of this stuff is really working at anywhere near full functionality yet. Right? Is that we all can see, okay, here's what's going to happen. When Andy sorts out the demo thing and there is a demo device in every car in the world, like the amount of, or the quality of the decisions we can make, because not only will our answers get better, but the questions get better because you learn how to ask the right question. Like that's going to change the world. And that's just like one, no offense, that's one small project. Right. And like in the giant world of blockchain and Meatspace. So whether it's monitoring cars or weather or air quality or how many people walk by or anything, like all of these different things, how much, I don't know, cell phone usage happens, these cell phone, like all of this stuff that's happening right now, we're still in the very beginning parts of it. And
there's
we're
new use cases every day.
Yeah. So those are exciting things for me. Is like, what are you guys seeing as far as what's the next thing coming down the pipe that you think will be big or interesting or that you have your eye on right now?
just sorry, I don't want to go super off topic, but
Sure.
that's a super cool thing that I think maybe Andy find it. I mean, it's just a curiosity from kind of builder's perspective. I sent Dennis this article the other day about Audi integrating with the grid, and this is kind of talking like demo. And once you have a ton of fleet or like infrastructure, and they integrate with the light grid, so you get a countdown of every light. That will tell you like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it turns green, like just kind of magically, right?
Oh, cool.
And then you have settings that you can do with the cars nowadays with Audi, where you can tell, hey, I'm on Main Street or on whatever, Sunset Boulevard. I want to take all of them green. So it will calculate you the speed that you will take it at. So imagine if you can actually hook up all these kind of infrastructure together with these
Yeah.
devices, providing more data. So it's like, like you start talking just kind of like the base layer and a lot of cool stuff. So those are the applications that are kind of interesting and for people create value. I feel like, have a ton of different vehicles that some of them are connected one way, some others, the other, and then you can kind of bring them and start building cool stuff. So I think that, there's definitely, yeah, it was a
No,
cool
it's
thing.
awesome. It means that Andrew will
These
never
things
be out of
take
work.
time. These things take a lot of time. I remember I was working on a project in Florida like 4 years ago that I think was based on the same technology. This is with my previous employer, a company called Transdev, that primarily was building big mobility infrastructure operations. So like they would come in and operate a bus or rail system. We were deploying an autonomous shuttle at the University of Florida in Gainesville, which I think is actually still running. And it was using that signal priority technology to be able to know when the light was going to change colors. And they were like just starting this pilot deployment 5 years ago.
Right.
And now it's made its way into a production car so people can actually use it. And like, that's something that I think a lot of people, especially in the crypto world, who are used to this like immediate satisfaction, like give me this thing right now.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
the
Why
price
isn't it
go
here
up now.
yesterday? Yeah.
Like, the time to develop a new automotive platform is like 8 years. And so that means that like when GM started making the Ultium platform that they're about to put out with the new electric vehicles that they're releasing, like this, a lot of stuff hadn't even been thought of at that point. Like blockchain wasn't even around, really.
Right.
Like nobody knew what Bitcoin was. And so like connecting a lot of that stuff takes a considerable amount of time. And also like the turnover in something like a vehicle or a cell tower is not like your cell phone where you replace it every 2 years. Like with a car, most cars in the US are over 10 years old now. So like it takes, a decade to fully turn over, not even fully turn over the cars on the road. And so, that's why I think we're investing a lot in like some of these, not hacks, but like over the top solutions where like, plugging this into your car is a way to put it on the internet because the people that built that car 8 years ago didn't even think that anybody would want to connect a car to the internet. And like, so there's a lot of these, growth hacks and things that you can do that, take 1 to 2 years, but still that's longer than a lot of people in the pure software world are used to.
Totally. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's certainly longer than I'm used to. I think of it as like we can dream, I don't know, like exponentially faster than we can build. And so I've got all these ideas about how the world should be or could be because of what I've learned in the last 18 months. And it's like, no, it's going to take another 4 or 5 years for it to come to fruition.
Yeah, you got to really want it to make it happen. You have to like, it's not just like, oh, like somebody spent the last 5 years being like, I want that light. I want to know when that light is going to change colors. Like, and that's
that
like
wasn't
a
like an accident,
narrow application. I mean, it's important for some things, and like, if you deploy it everywhere, it can optimize traffic quite a bit. But like, that's a long slog of like hundreds of people working on that, thousands of people probably, and baking it into a car and like getting it out there. And now it's like probably in 0.01% of cars on the road.
Yeah, yeah. You ask how many people know about blockchain, and it's still there's a lot of people. I run a little cookie store, and I bet if I asked every customer came in, I don't know, 60% of them would be like, "What? What are you talking about?" And that's not even Helium or Demo or anything.
And they don't care. Yeah. Nobody knows what SMTP is, but everybody likes email.
Yeah,
they're like, it's like you don't need to know. And most people don't. I mean, it's hard. It's hard for me because I'm such a nerd. And for a lot of people I work with, it's like we want to explain and have everybody understand this stuff, but they just don't care.
Nope.
And
no, they just want the light to be green when they're going through it. Come on.
Right. Yeah. And then once it works, they're like, oh, it's like the line about Wi-Fi on the plane, where like as soon as you got Wi-Fi on the plane, everybody was just like, oh, the fucking Wi-Fi is broken. Like, oh, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
Like you're flying through the air and you have Wi-Fi in the sky. And this is something that didn't exist 2 years ago, and now you like expect that it is, just ubiquitous and works every time.
Yeah, I love it, Andrew. I see you're like shaking your head and laughing. Like,
well, no, I was just like, I was thinking about it too. Is like, it brings us to the very exact point of like why we're all here in the first place. Is like even with those cars, right, connected to the internet, all this cool stuff, you need networks to do that. Like that's the thing. You need networks to do that. So it's a perfect time for a lot of this stuff. That's why we haven't seen a lot of it because like the infrastructure and stuff, the stuff that we're building that's the stuff that's going to allow that in the future. So
Yeah, we're building
it's
it.
really like it's happening right now. So it's going to be really cool to see all of this stuff actually come. Yeah, it's going to look like a movie.
It's gonna be pretty cool. So I'm seeing. Let's see, and the chat is starting to fire off. I saw one question I didn't understand. I thought maybe you guys might get it. What's Anthony Hall? What's securing the API/data as I see it becoming a customer education issue? I'm not sure what that question is. Do you guys?
Oh, I think he was I think he was talking for Demo when you were. I think I saw when he dropped that question. He was asking about the customer data security for Demo stuff. The API.
Right. This is a question I never think of because I think of like as a good person, but for bad actors, they're like, oh, I'm going to steal this data and do something with it. So is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's important to think about what's happening with the data today. And our goal is to never make things worse and to only move things in the direction of being better and more secure and to give people an alternative. So today, when you buy a car and you opt into the connected vehicle services, that data goes to your car company, and then they're free to share it with whoever they want after that. And most of the terms of service in the connected vehicle agreements, I think pretty much all of them. And as we've seen, and we've gotten sample data from OEMs and looked at it, like basically all of them are sharing it outside of their company, selling it to people. There's some really bad examples of that I could get into that I probably don't want to today, but in our case, when you connect a car to Demo, right now that data is going to Demo and not leaving and going anywhere else. So it's at least as good as what's happening with the OEM situation. And in a lot of cases, I think pretty much universally is better. And so you get that data back as a user for free today, although in the future we might have to charge for it. It's not going to be a whole huge cost, but and then it's also encrypted in such a way, especially with the hardware device, where it's going directly to a server that you as the user control rather than a server that another company controls that they can do whatever they want with because of an agreement with you. And we follow the best practices as far as encryption on the data and securing the APIs. And basically our goal is to never make things less secure than they are today. So if you have credentials to your car and you put them into the Demo app, we actually never get those credentials. You're just going to the OEM server and asking them to give the data to Demo. And so that we've spent a lot of time and effort on. And then we've also started the process of letting in outside, like approved cybersecurity auditors and folks that are going to, essentially publish reports and saying like, here's how Demo's set up. You don't have to trust them about it. Like we looked at everything and here's how it works. And over time, we have a long roadmap towards like making things as secure as possible and also allowing people to run their own nodes, which will basically let them collect and store all of their data and offload it to a local network if they want and keep it on their own server, which is, not something that's going to happen right out of the box.
That's pretty geeky, but that's cool.
Yeah, and if you were to run a large fleet, or if you were, say somebody that is using your vehicles for some sensitive purpose that you don't want the data shared publicly for, you can set that up on Demo, and that's part of our goal is to make the connected vehicle world more secure and decentralized. And there's a lot of like super nerdy stuff we could go into about how we're doing that, but that's the general approach.
Love it. Oh, that's rad. I'm seeing stuff. Let's see. So seeing stuff in the chat on Hive Mapper. I've got to get it out. Reach out to Ariel to get him on this thing. I think this may be like a weekly or a monthly show because I think this stuff is so important for people to see. Going beyond Helium.
There's one other question that came up. Can I answer? Anthony had a follow-up question.
Hit it.
So
sure.
on the control features, we are extremely careful with anything that is associated with not just pulling data. So pulling data out of the car obviously is sensitive and personally identifiable information. In some cases, we don't attach it to the user's name. You can sign up without giving us your name. We actually don't ask you anywhere for your name or your email address. You can just sign up with a wallet address if you want. So just a public key. And then on the control features, which we have in test right now, so the ability to lock and unlock your car and eventually other things like controlling the charge state of the vehicle. All of those things are going to be done through the OEM's API at first. So you're not going to be able to do anything to the car that the OEM wouldn't want you to do in the first place, which is important. And also all of the control features, in order to even enable those, we're asking the user for permission every time. So it's the same thing that you would do with your OEM. We're using their API. When it comes to the hardware device itself, these are read-only devices at the moment. So, you could push a firmware update to them, which is a multi-step, like very complicated, secure process on our side. That would allow you to send commands back to the car, display information in the car if you wanted to. That's not something that we're going to support in the short term for the hardware device. They're going to be read only, and there's a future in which maybe some third-party hardware device is controlling something in your car, but that's not something that we have on our roadmap in the short term.
No, I mean, someone's going to figure it out and hack it and do it backwards. But it sounds like you guys are doing a fantastic job making sure that isn't at least easy. So yeah, I mean, good.
Yeah, people will be free to do what they want with it at a certain point, but we're trying to be as responsible as possible about that, and that's the goal.
Dig it. Dennis, Jan, what are you guys thinking when you're kind of looking ahead for? Are you guys going to branch out into more pieces? Are you going to bring in different what we call kind of crypto stacks? I think Andrew had called it. Are you going to add stuff to the pool, or is there something else where you're looking at, like, where's the business going?
I think we're going to probably focus on a couple main things for now. And we always run like small ops into like kind of R&D into different things and try things out. There's so much stuff that's coming up, Hive Mapper, as well, that you guys mentioned, and I'm sure some stealthy third and fourth and fifth DY network coming in the pipeline. I'm sure, but we're really gonna, I think, focus on a couple really core kind of partnerships or I guess branches, and then reassess as we go, I guess. But we want to really be a little bit more focused with like smaller R&D along the way, I think. I don't know.
Just keeping the R&D sections on, but we'll be disclosing more stuff, but definitely getting a more long-term project off the ground that's very tangible, right? Very physical, very into the topic of the call here, like the space of blockchain and kind of solving some of the issues that we've seen for the past few years, and also launching, hopefully helping the team at Demo get where they need to be as well. So anyway. But
yeah, no, it's cool to see all the cross pollination here between you three guys, because you all basically know each other and have talked, and that was one of the reasons I was like, oh, let's get these three groups of dudes on and chatting. Andrew, when you said crypto stack, what were you thinking? Are you thinking of like a box that you're going to send to people, or how are you thinking about it?
Oh no, so I was thinking. So I've got this. I had this thing. It was a rideshare crypto pack idea that I was thinking, where I was going to take a lot of these like mobile, DUI projects, Hive Mapper, Demo. There's a couple. I was going to be doing pollen mappers, like bumblebees and other things, anything along that side, and putting it all together in a pack and just giving it as like a host.
Right.
Like a normal host that you would with the Helium. Give a profit split. Install it on the car. Let them do it. Do it a professional install. Don't charge anything for it. Give it to people and allow people to earn more money. Because at the end of the day, like that's part of at least why we started it too, is like we wanted to evangelize as many people into this space as we could, and also just show them the power of like what types of things it could unlock for them. Right. Like not everybody is into it right now, but I think projects like these are giving a value add to people that never knew that they were there. And so, those, value added, even if they just got like the telemetrics, right, from the demo stuff, and they knew about their car, like that's awesome. If they didn't have to pay for that, they like that's a great benefit. You know what I mean? So those types of things are really interesting to us. And then on top of that too, like, I saw someone mention the Solana phone in there, right?
Yeah.
I think in the space in general, right? Like I see more and more companies in tech diving into blockchain and into crypto centric, like, models, like different things. Yep. I think that like looking at the traditional tech companies like the Apples and the, you just saw, I think it was Meta announced this week that they dropped their crypto platform, like these are becoming like the old school guys. And I think that you'll see a
Crazy.
shift with all the like blockchain companies and the big crypto companies. Those are going to become the new growth tech companies. Those are going to be the big tech companies in the future. Those are going to be the
Yeah.
ones that take over the space. And so just like looking at a crypto company like Solana that was full blockchain, and they're now coming into the hardware space and offering, going up against Apple with phones,
Yep.
like,
Yep.
or Android. It's crazy. And it's going to be really interesting to see where that like future dynamic heads.
Yeah. No, at some point, Andy's going to be the next. He's the guy that runs Facebook, and we're going to have to go through like 9 secretaries to get him on the call. If we brainstorm a little bit together, fellas, and think about what you could put in a car, because one of you guys is already putting something in a car. We've talked about Hive Mapper, and if I'm thinking about like a crypto stack, is that there's the ability to get the information from the car, like the OBD stuff, the onboard diagnostics, I think it's called, and then there's the mapping stuff as far as like they're taking pictures in Hive Mapper. What else would you think, whether it exists or not today, that you could put in a car that would allow that whatever car owner, car driver to benefit, and maybe also be a benefit to the world?
I want to hear what everybody else has to say, and then I'll give you my answer.
Okay, you can go. You can be the closer.
Get something too. I'll be right.
Yep.
I wanted to bring something up also that Andrew mentioned it, and we were kind of talking about it, joking that like there's going to be how you see like this like delivery guy running like multiple phones with like Postmates, Uber Eats, and like
Yep.
Caviar, what have you. Like you're going to have like these people with like just like stacked with like miners and mappers of all sorts, and
Yeah,
they're
it's
just
true.
gonna be,
Actually,
like, on little scooters and like just like dangling like a Christmas tree. Like I feel like that's gonna be like what you need to think of is like how can you accommodate all of these things and all of these networks, and that like a host have like 85 different like radios and antennas and LoRa and 5G and CBRS from X, Y, and Z, and like actually like multi-tenancy in that fashion is going to be like a thing, and we need to like kind of figure it out. And then to that, I just wanted to add that. And then for vehicles, I think that I feel like I have a sense that like Demo is pretty well suited to just like unify a lot of things in that interface,
Yeah.
like hardware interface, just because it's and essentially you're running a small computer in your car, so you can interface a lot of things with it. So you could probably like figure out touch points between like Demo and Hive Mapper, or Helium mapping, or pollens, bumblebees and honeybees and all
Yeah.
sorts of things to like kind of integrate all of those things under one umbrella. And just because like Demo is the only one that actually runs like essentially a small computer in your car. I don't think Hive Mapper has that. I think Hive Mapper is essentially just like a like
It's
a
just
camera.
collecting stuff, right? And then it like uploads it when you park, something like that.
Right. Yeah. It's a bit, yeah, but it's sort of like more narrow use case, and I think
Sure.
Demo is like more of an umbrella. So
Yeah.
I think that you could stack a lot of things on top of that, probably.
I mean, you could
And
map cell phone coverage. You could figure out these traffic light things. There's a
We are.
bunch of stuff. Yeah. Right. You could do this stuff.
You know,
No,
I was-
it's happening right now.
I was
I mean,
talking
we
to
did
someone else too.
yeah,
We
I
had
was
somebody
gonna say-
reaching out on Twitter. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
yeah. I just said just a quick note that we did a use case where we put a Helium mapper inside of a Demo device, and it fit snug. It was fine. It's just it like technically it's possible. So yeah.
Yeah. Andrew, what do you got? I'll start.
Oh, I
calling
was gonna-
even.
I was gonna say, I saw this. I was talking to this other guy, and this is not anything that I think that they're doing right now or they're working on, because Hive Mapper is just like image processing, right?
Yep.
But he was looking at a redundancy. He was like, I wonder if I could, do something where I take those images and somehow run them through a machine learning thing to find, like, for instance, like asset tracking logistics, if the other ones were to fail, like redundancy. Or think about like, in terms of like, a lot of people start getting these cameras on their cars, like say eventually Teslas, they build, like, say they built Hive Mapper into Teslas, and they are using all those different images and stuff like that. Think of being able to find like these Amber Alerts, or like all these other things, like different things like that,
Ooh,
that they could utilize and put that machine learning through, and just crowdsource all this information. It's gonna be really cool. But other than that, I think Demo's got it pretty much covered with
I think
pretty
that-
much
yeah.
everything else. Other than the Goodyear stuff is kind of cool. I saw that at ATX House, was kind of
That's
awesome.
going to be cool. One thing I think I'm seeing is someone who doesn't have to necessarily build their own piece of software or kind of crypto specific hardware. There's a guy here in San Diego. I think it's PowerSore. I'll drop a link in the chat. Where he's been building boxes for outdoor hotspots, and we've been talking back and forth because, like, hey, I think that time is kind of passed. But I think we're going to start seeing like almost boxes that are set up to take 8 different crypto projects. And JM had talked about air quality. So you start thinking, okay, now you're collecting imagery, you're collecting radar, you're collecting air quality, you're collecting information from the car, like not only where it goes, but what's going on in it. And you're going to need a place to put all that stuff. And just like Dennis and Jan did with the Layer 0 Alpha, is make it a super clean box to put any hotspot in. This will be a super clean box to put any of these projects in. So, oh yeah, I'll drop the link in the chat. But Andy, what do you got, my closer? What's your what are your thoughts on this?
So somebody was asking. It's been interesting to see other blockchain projects start to announce hardware, which I think is going to be a continuing trend.
Yep.
You saw Lana say that they were going to make a phone, and Polygon the other day said that they're going to integrate with an existing phone. And somebody was asking, when is the demo car coming out? And I know that from our founding team is like, that's his sort of long-term goal, is to make a car. But I think ultimately, like, what's going to end up happening is really like kind of pushing this alternate view of the future, where the car is really a platform that the user can, like, people thought about doing this with mobile phones. You remember the Google phone, where you could like take all of the components out and swap them in and like change the camera and change the battery, and then they all decided like, oh, we actually just want you to buy a new phone every 2 years, so we're going to make this thing impossible to repair.
Yep.
Cars aren't like that, right? Like, people want to repair and upgrade and customize their car, and they own them for a long period of time, so they want to invest in them in some cases. So like, I've gone through this exercise, and I think a lot of other people in the demo world have started to do this too, where you like go and you look at all of the aftermarket electronics, right? Like, you have this is Nexar. It's basically Hive Mapper, but just very Web 2. And this is one of my favorites. It's a dash cam that is also a rear view mirror that has a backup cam on it. So like, if you want to add a backup cam to your car and a dash cam, you like swap out the rear view mirror and put this in there. There's a million different kinds of OBD dongles, some of them smaller. This one just came out. It's called Kaio. We've been testing it out. There's a million different form factors of like, other types of auto pies, things that you can put into the vehicle. And then we think what we ultimately are going to need to put out there, and this is something that we've been hacking on and working on some different iterations on, is something sort of like a hub that like can be put in the trunk of the car. There'll be different form factors for this, but something that like has a Wi-Fi hotspot on it, so you can use that in the vehicle. It has backup power, so you don't need to drain the battery, from the car, or if the car runs out of battery, you still have another power source, like outlets to plug stuff into. You can take it with you on the go. Like, it has all of the space you need to put and extend whatever else you need to have in there. And it's ultimately something that you control and can swap out and upgrade, move from one car to another. Like, this sort of aftermarket electronics category, I think, is going to come back. Like, back in the day when everybody had their like Pioneer stereo in the dash and their, subwoofers in the trunk.
Yeah.
Take off the
There's a whole
faceplate.
new generation of stuff that's coming out, and some really interesting projects that have been around for years that we're building on. Things like Comet AI that are doing really advanced stuff as far as building self-driving models with dashcam data and OBD connections. And so like, there's this world in which I think if you get the hub right, and you get the architecture right, and you get the incentive model and the developer platform right, people will just come in and fill in the gaps and build anything. Like, the point, sort of like very narrow vertical use case of like, we want to collect air quality data, we want to collect sensor data. Like, I think everybody just sort of realizes that like, more is better, and you need a way to let developers build apps on it for anything to be useful. And open is better than closed, although it doesn't always look like that at the beginning. And so, that's kind of like the long-term direction that we're headed in. And we're going to do some stuff. And it's not, like I said, it's not going to happen immediately. Like, none of the stuff I showed you is
three.
ready for production. Yeah, season 3, exactly. Yeah. So, all of this stuff is in the works, and I think we've, hit on something that is an approach that you can follow for a decade and wind up somewhere really interesting that makes the world a better place. So that's what we're trying to do.
Dig it. Oh, that's cool. Dennis and Jan, what's going through your brain boxes? I know you guys aren't. You're not just sitting there like vegging out. I can see like the all the lights flashing in there.
They're trying to figure out how to sell all this stuff.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. Yeah,
Get
I
it
mean,
into
it's just the possibilities, right? The possibility of a product, of use cases, of also creating, I guess, sustainable like networks
Utility,
and
yeah.
utility out of these products. Like um, I think is the way to go. Is like there's gonna be a huge challenge to get a few, two, three, maybe four decentralized broadband networks. But then after that, then you gotta use them. Um, Demo is already saying, "Hey, we're using it with whatever we get, Tulio, whatever other networks." And also kind of jump in the next step, right? Like, what are going to be some of the platforms? What can you do? What devices? Like Andy was showing a ton of devices, so
Yep.
I mean, I think there's just like, the same way you can run, hosting programs of fleet management, or you can just run, a bunch of accessories linked up to, to customers' needs, or to a small little, from car collectibles,
Yeah.
or people who collect cars, or fleet of, FedEx vehicles, or, bus driving, whatever. So there's a lot of, you can brainstorm all day about what you want. It probably is more of a task of maybe finding what's more immediate, like what needs to be done um, before and super fast, so that the
Yeah.
thing doesn't stall and then you lose momentum, with the incentives and all that. So I
Yeah,
guess it's more of that, right? It's like, oh my God, there's so many things to do, but what's the right thing to do right now, right? It's
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like
Yeah.
the thing.
I was just thinking about like the fact that just like this cyberpunk future where you have like a lot of stuff like in traditional like cyberpunk as a genre, as like a literature and like movie genre, you have this thing where you take like old stuff and you repurpose it to work with like really advanced like kind of add-ons. And so like I was just thinking about the fact that Tesla in some way is like somewhat that, like in the way that like they didn't choose lidar, for instance. They worked with like just webcams. Like you just literally have like a bunch of cameras and they're all linked up, but they're doing really really smart things. So like I was just thinking about that as kind of the it seems to be like the direction where you repurpose a lot of things, and it's kind of an analogy to perhaps the DY stuff as well, because you have sort of, you can take like essentially like a gateway for a CBRS unit or for a 5G unit is like just a computer. Like, so essentially like all of these like pollen stems or a Freedom Fi gateway is just like, Freedom Fi is actually not, well, it turns out it's not something I don't think developed like purpose built. I think it was just like a small computer that they have like a manufacturer that they work with or something like
Yeah.
that. And
They
it's
had
just
it and it worked, and they're like, yeah, we're going to use this.
yeah. So like that seems to be the theme of like, how do you like within a blockchain, like how do you repurpose stuff? So like, or I guess it's gonna become a thing where you're gonna be like, well, like multi-tenancy for like DY networks, or like repurposing a gateway, or with cars as well. It's like it's gonna be like, well, there's Demo as a platform. Like, how can you repurpose a lot of stuff that's been manufactured in the past, and you just like make it work with something that's super advanced, like AI systems that can all of a sudden add like huge value to like huge capability to a
Yeah.
car that's, it could be like like a 2004 like Honda Accord or something, all of a sudden.
Don't you malign my 2004 Toyota Tacoma, finest vehicle in existence.
Oh, the cars are awesome. Yeah,
But
you
like,
can make
wouldn't you want a Wi-Fi hotspot in your car that would just automatically connect to whatever network is cheapest and allow you to be on your computer around it, or provide coverage, or charge your phone if you needed to? Like, there is these very like practical use cases that I think don't even really involve crypto stuff or Web3
Correct.
stuff at
Yep.
all. It's just like
Yep.
retrofitting these existing devices with better consumer electronics, or I think ultimately what's going to cause the tide to turn, and this is where like the open system, it's like the open system always starts off slower but then like builds much faster over time, like you saw with Linux or whatever else.
Wikipedia,
It's like,
whatever. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, Wikipedia. Where like there's something that flips, and I think a lot of it is when like the establishment sort of runs out of gas and they realize like people building connected vehicle apps for GM and Ford and Toyota has like 6 different connected vehicle platforms, and Tesla has their own, which is the most advanced right now, but like Rivian and Polestar and whoever, like 20 different OEMs all doing the same thing makes no sense.
Right.
And societally, like if you were to look at that as like an alien coming down and looking at Earth and being like, there are thousands of people in different buildings all doing the same thing, building a shitty version of like the same product that millions of people, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people around the world are using. And like there is this way where you can all just work on the same thing and everybody gets what they want, and it makes a lot more sense. And like it just takes a long time, and it's going to take some of the OEMs to basically capitulate and say, we're not going to invest in building our own connected vehicle platform. We're going to build the best vehicle platform, and we're going to make it so that anybody who wants to bring connectivity into that vehicle and produce accessories that go with it, it's going to work with OpenPilot. It's going to work with, whatever backup battery system you want to have, whatever connectivity you want to have from whatever cell network. Like, we're just going to make a fast car that's comfortable to sit in, and like the seats are going to be nice, and there's going to be a big screen on it that will show whatever the hell you want. And like I think ultimately people are going to demand that, because you're going to be able to retrofit some cars just by chance, like accident of history. Some cars are going to be better than others at being retrofit for some of these experiences, and those are going to be more desirable on the used car market because people want those connected vehicle experiences that aren't controlled by an OEM because they're just better.
Yeah, I mean, very similar, right? Like everybody was like putting thousands of engineering hours to develop their own like entertainment system on the cars, and then Apple CarPlay came about, and like just use it. It's just better. Everybody uses CarPlay, on the new cars, so it's just more comfortable for iOS. But again, it's like iOS is segmented, right? So just kind of like that makes sense. Also, like for example, I have an old car as well, like like a 2004. Like Jetta or whatever. I love if it'll have like a Wi-Fi spot. Yeah, there you go. Like I love to like have a bunch of like remote unlock. I was away. I would have. I was already using the geo, the map finding function. I was looking at temps and a bunch of little sensors that they were pulling from the car from the demo device. So it's like it's still useful even now. Even there's like very limited functionality. So if you add just remote unlock, maybe power on or AC or few things, is like, oh, okay, well, I just get a few very convenient things on all my cars across. It's like it becomes like a smart car.
Yeah.
And I don't need to, so it's like, imagine if you keep adding like functionality, it's a very useful product.
Yeah. No, it's wild to think. I think any alien that comes to the Earth is just going to be like, man, you guys are just such idiots.
Yeah. You've been doing some crazy stuff the last few years.
How did you get to this point? And then the idea of like a box that you drop in your car that improves the car all around, whether it's Wi-Fi, air quality, or a million different things. I think that's fantastic. And it's a lot like if we zoom way out and think about mobile phones, is you can buy any mobile phone you want. They all connect to the mobile phone network, however it goes through different towers, and you don't have to know anything about really anything. All you have to know how to do is how to spend money. And you can buy.
And the more you learn about it, the more you're like, how the hell does this actually work? Like, that's why I feel like that about the electric grid. Like, the more I learn about the electric grid, and then you start looking at like all of the pieces of it as you're driving around, you're like, holy shit, like this is really crazy. Like,
yeah. This is not how someone would have designed it for sure. If they could start over. Ripping. Andrew, anything that you wanted to drop in there? I see kind of just your brain box is
I'm just absorbing, man.
Yeah.
I'm just absorbing. I'm just sitting in here and just geeking out on everything everybody's saying. I mean, I don't know. I just think the future's bright with this stuff. It's gonna be cool. Like Andy was saying, looking around on the electric grid, I'm like, I just have to say, since I've started this whole thing, all I do all day when I'm just looking at the tops of buildings and figuring out how these networks are run. Like that's all I do now. Whenever I'm like, oh yeah, look, there's antennas right there, and my wife's she's like, yeah, that's cool. It's like the stupidest thing, but you realize how much this stuff has developed around us. So in that aspect, I feel like we still have a long way to go. right?
Yeah.
But it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be bumpy, and we're gonna have to get our hands dirty. But
But that's
yeah,
it.
it's gonna be awesome.
Dig it. All right. Well, thanks a ton for coming on here. I'll close this out with this idea that I heard on I think it's the Bankless podcast with Andreessen and Chris Dixon, where they talked about folks being, when the laptop first came along, it was 43 pounds on a 4-inch screen. Nobody thought it would work. It's like, oh, it's a stupid thing. Who's going to carry that thing around? I think it was called the luggable. Who's going to lug that thing on an airplane? And everybody made fun of it. And I feel like, and I think those guys feel like as well, although they were talking about crypto and we're talking about this blockchain and Meatspace, like we're in the same arena. We're at the place where it's like, oh, I'm waiting for this device to come out and I'm on this wait list for these 9 different devices and this shit will never work. And, Helium's got it wrong, or Pollen didn't do this, or WeatherXM didn't do that. Or like, that's the space we're in right now. And all of these problems can be looked at 2 ways. They can be looked at having a negative impact on you right now, or they can be looked at an opportunity to generate whatever you want in the world, whether you want generational wealth, whether you want to change the world, whether you want to improve the world, whether you want to know more about the world, ask better questions, get better answers. Like every single problem that you see right now is an opportunity. And that's one of the coolest things about the folks on this call here, is that all of you guys are finding problems to solve. And that is a fantastically cool thing to be a part of. So thank you guys for doing that. Thank you guys for coming on the show, and let's do it again. Let's get more people on and keep talking about this.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having us on.
Sure. Thanks for
Rock
having
on.
us.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Pleasure.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Late.
See you guys later.
Thanks.
Yeah.